How old do you think this woman is? Take a guess. Seriously, pick a number. Most people say 45, some say 50. Very few guess the truth. She's 62. Now here's the question. Why does this happen over and over again to Filipinos? If you're Filipino, you've probably heard it yourself. Wait, how old are you? No way. I thought you were much younger. Maybe it happened at work, maybe while traveling, maybe at a family reunion overseas. Someone guessed your age and got it completely wrong. You smiled, you laughed. Maybe you thanked them, but deep down you probably didn't know why. For years, most people had the same explanation. It's just good genes. But scientists wanted a better answer. Was it genetics? Was it diet? Was it climate? Or was it something else entirely? The answer turned out to be far more fascinating than anyone expected. Because this story doesn't begin with skincare. If someone has ever guessed your age completely wrong, hit the like button, because the real reason why has nothing to do with good genes. It begins inside a cave, thousands of kilometers away, in Siberia. In 2010, scientists examined what looked like an ordinary prehistoric finger bone. They extracted ancient DNA. The results stunned the scientific world. The bone didn't belong to a modern human. It wasn't a Neanderthal. It belonged to an entirely unknown branch of humanity. Scientists named them the Denisovans. At first, this looked like one more remarkable archaeological discovery. Then researchers compared Denisovan DNA with living people around the world. Most populations carried only tiny traces. Then they looked at the Philippines. Everything changed. One indigenous Filipino community, the Aita Magbucon of Bataan, was found to carry the highest Denisovan ancestry yet reported in any studied population. Not because they are Denisovans, they are fully modern humans. But somewhere in the distant past, their ancestors encountered Denisovans. Fragments of that ancient DNA survived for tens of thousands of years until scientists finally uncovered the story hidden inside modern DNA. Now here's something important. This does not mean Denisovan DNA is the reason Filipinos appear younger. Science has never claimed that. Researchers are still studying what Denisovan genes actually influence. So if Denisovan DNA isn't the answer, what is? Scientists stopped looking at ancient bones and started looking at your skin. Dermatologists noticed something unusual. When they compared skin aging across different populations, they found a consistent pattern. Many East and Southeast Asian populations, including Filipinos, often showed visible signs of aging later than many people of European ancestry living under similar conditions. Why? The first clue was hidden beneath the surface. Human skin contains a layer called the dermis. This is where collagen and elastin help keep skin firm and flexible. Multiple dermatology studies have found that on average, Asian skin tends to have a thicker dermis than European skin. Not better, not worse, simply different. That thicker structure may help delay some visible signs of aging. Researchers also found differences in collagen organization. As we age, collagen naturally decreases. Everyone experiences this. But studies suggest many Asian populations maintain aspects of collagen structure differently over time, helping skin remain firm for longer. That discovery explained part of the mystery. But only part. Scientists knew another factor had to be involved. Then they turned to something every Filipino knows well: the tropical sun. Most visible skin aging isn't caused only by growing older. Years of ultraviolet exposure slowly damage collagen beneath the skin. Dermatologists call this photoaging. Now imagine living near the equator for thousands of years, generation after generation, beneath some of the strongest sunlight on Earth. That environment shaped the human body. One of its greatest adaptations was melanin. Most people think melanin simply determines skin color. In reality, it also helps absorb ultraviolet radiation before it damages deeper skin layers. Think of it as your body's natural sunscreen. It doesn't stop aging, but it reduces years of accumulated sun damage. That's why populations with higher average melanin levels often experience less photoaging over a lifetime. Your ancestors evolved beneath tropical sunlight. Their bodies adapted to survive it, little by little, generation after generation. But the story goes even deeper. Around 5,000 years ago, Austronesian seafarers spread throughout the Philippine archipelago. They became the largest ancestral foundation of most Filipinos today. They crossed oceans without engines or compasses. They lived beneath intense sunlight, humid air, and tropical conditions. Over thousands of years, traits that helped people survive these environments remained within the population. Not because evolution cared about looking young, because evolution favored survival. Many scientists believe these ancient environmental adaptations still influence how Filipino skin responds to aging today. But here's the twist. The Austronesians weren't the first people here. When they arrived, they found communities already living in the Philippines whose ancestors had survived beneath the tropical sun for more than 50,000 years. Their descendants include indigenous communities such as the Ayeta, Ati, Agta, and Batak. Genetic research shows these ancestors were among the earliest modern humans to settle island Southeast Asia. For tens of thousands of years, they adapted to one of the world's most demanding environments. When Austronesian-speaking peoples later arrived, they didn't replace these earlier communities. The populations mixed, families grew, generations passed. The result was layer upon layer of ancestry, creating the remarkable diversity Filipinos still display today. There has never been one Filipino face. Every family carries its own unique combination of thousands of years of human history. Now let's return to the Denisovans. When scientists discovered Denisovan DNA inside some modern populations, they immediately wanted to know what this ancient DNA actually does. The honest answer is, we're still learning. Some Denisovan genes have been linked to immune function. Others appear connected to adaptation to local environments. Researchers continue studying these questions today. But one thing is already clear. The Philippines occupies a unique place in human evolution. Very few places on Earth preserve such a rich record of ancient human history, not only in archaeology, but in living DNA. Now here's something many people never realize. Even inside one Filipino family, aging can look completely different. Maybe your older sister still looks like she's in her 20s. Maybe your uncle has hardly changed in 20 years. Maybe your cousin looks much younger than everyone expects. Why? Because genetics doesn't work like a recipe. It works more like a shuffle. Every child inherits a different combination of DNA from both parents. Some inherit slightly higher melanin production. Others inherit differences in collagen-related traits. Others inherit different facial structure or skin thickness. Then lifestyle enters the picture. Sleep, diet, exercise, smoking, stress, and sun exposure. all interact with those inherited genes. That's why scientists don't talk about one single aging gene. They study hundreds of genes working together across an entire lifetime, and nowhere is that diversity easier to see than across the Philippine archipelago. More than 7,000 islands, separated for thousands of years by mountains, forests, rivers, and seas. Some communities remained isolated. Others became centers of trade. Chinese merchants arrived, Malay sailors crossed nearby waters, Indian traders visited local ports, Arab merchants established trading networks. Later came the Spanish, then the Manila galleons connected the Philippines with Mexico for more than 2 centuries. Each chapter added another layer to the Filipino story. Each migration contributed something new. Over time, those layers created one of the most genetically diverse populations in Asia. That's why an Ilocano may not look exactly like a Cebuano. A Tausug may not resemble an Ivatan. A Bicolano may have different features than a Kapampangan. Regional history shaped regional genetics. Urban centers such as Manila became even more diverse as families from every corner of the archipelago met, traded, married, and built new generations together. Yet despite all those differences, scientists continue to observe one broad pattern. Many Filipinos, as a population, often show visible skin aging later than people whose ancestors evolved in very different climates. Not because every Filipino stays young forever. No one escapes aging, but because thousands of years of biology combined with environment created a remarkable foundation. Then researchers discovered something equally important. Genes explain only part of the story. The rest comes from how people live. If genetics gives you the blueprint, your lifestyle determines how much of that blueprint is preserved. One of the biggest discoveries in aging research has nothing to do with wrinkles. It has to do with stress. When stress becomes constant for years, the body produces high levels of cortisol. Research has linked chronic stress with increased inflammation, slower tissue repair, weakened immunity, and faster biological aging. Even the skin feels those effects. Now think about one of the strongest traditions shared across Filipino communities. Family, grandparents, parents, children, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, godparents, friends who become family. Filipino psychologists describe this through the idea of Kapwa, a concept often translated as shared identity or shared humanity. No study has proven that Kapwa itself makes people age more slowly. Science doesn't say that. But researchers consistently find that people with stronger family support, close friendships, and lower levels of chronic loneliness often experience better long-term health and lower stress. Perhaps part of the Filipino story isn't found only in DNA. Perhaps it's also found around the dinner table, at birthdays, fiestas, family reunions, and in the habit of never facing life's hardest moments completely alone. Then there's food. Long before nutrition science existed, Filipino families were already eating many foods researchers now recognize as highly nutritious. Fish, leafy vegetables, fresh tropical fruits, malunggay, calamansi, coconut, fermented foods. No single food stops aging, but together they provide vitamins, healthy fats, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants that support normal cellular function. Vitamin C helps the body produce collagen. Antioxidants help reduce oxidative stress. Healthy fats help maintain the skin's protective barrier. Your Lola probably never talked about antioxidants or collagen. Yet many of the foods she cooked contain exactly the nutrients scientists now study in laboratories. not because ancient people knew modern chemistry, because generations of experience taught them what helped families stay healthy. When you step back and look at the whole picture, something remarkable appears. There isn't one secret behind why many Filipinos seem to age well. There never was. It's not one magical gene, not one miracle food, not one skincare routine. It's layer after layer. Ancient adaptation, inherited biology, environment, family, community, nutrition, lifestyle, all working together across an entire lifetime. And that's what makes this story so extraordinary. Because when scientists searched for one simple answer, they discovered something much richer. The Filipino story itself. Remember the woman from the beginning. Most people guessed her age wrong, not because they weren't paying attention, but because they were comparing her to the aging patterns they were used to seeing. Science has been doing exactly the same thing. Comparing populations, comparing environments, comparing genetics, comparing skin biology. Little by little, the picture became clearer. Here's what we know today. Many Filipinos appear to age more slowly in visible ways because several biological and environmental factors may be working together. Skin that often contains more protective melanin. A dermis that tends to be thicker in many Asian populations. Collagen structures that often remain supportive for longer. Thousands of years of adaptation to tropical environments. Deep ancestral diversity built through multiple waves of migration. Strong family and community relationships that help reduce chronic stress. Traditional diets rich in foods that support overall health. None of these guarantees that every Filipino will look younger than everyone else. Every person is different. Genes are only the beginning of the story. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this research isn't that it explains youthful-looking skin. It's that it tells a much larger story. A story about survival. Your ancestors crossed open oceans, lived through typhoons, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, changing climates. They raised families, built communities, protected the next generation, again and again. Without realizing they were leaving tiny pieces of themselves inside every generation that followed. Today, those tiny pieces are still with you, in your face, in your skin, in your DNA. Not because they were trying to create eternal youth, but because they were trying to survive. And survival, repeated over thousands of years, leaves remarkable traces. So the next time someone smiles and says, "You don't look your age," smile back, because now you know the story behind the compliment. A story that began thousands of years ago beneath the tropical sun of the Philippine Islands. If this documentary changed the way you see the Filipino story, share it with someone who's always been told, "You don't look your age." And if you enjoyed this journey, watch our documentary. Why do Filipinos look so different from other Asians? It connects directly to everything you've learned today.